and two, and one, and we are live. Welcome to the live stream show. And today we are talking about how you can supercharge yourself. And what do I mean by that? Well, I wrote it all down. We're talking about supercharging your believability, your networkability, your marketability, and last but not least, your hireability. And this is true. Like, I know that most of my audience are people who are working for themselves, but you know what? You need to get hired. You need to get hired by your clients. You need to get hired by your customers. Now, my guest today is Sonal Bal, and she is the one who is in charge of superchargingyourself.com. And not only that, like the thing that has impressed me about her, like she has lots to talk about, lots to share on this topic of how can we be our best self? How can we supercharge ourselves so that we can bring the best version of ourselves out to the world and be marketable and trustable and hireable, etc. But she has done these really cool things online. I noticed her on YouTube where she has got the Supercharge channel going with over 100,000 subscribers. Huge accomplishment. I mean, this is not easy to do. And on LinkedIn, where she goes live regularly, she has got another 30,000 people who are connected with her on the platform. So lots for us to talk about. Stay tuned, don't touch the dial, and let's start the show. Recorded live in Boston, Massachusetts, this is the Livestream Show. In a world full of underexposed entrepreneurs, the Livestream Show is your gateway to a global community of live stream pioneers who dare to go live and create something special and unexpected, which could only happen because it was live. I'm your host, Brad Powell. Let's get on with the show. All right. Welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for having me. Fantastic introduction, your pronunciation of my name, everything on point.
All right. I did something right. That's so great. Well, that's good. Good to know. So just to get started, I want you to tell a little bit of the backstory. Like, I know that your background is in human resources. And can you tell a little bit of the journey from that background to this whole concept of supercharging? Like, where did this come from and how did you land on this? First of all, I think it's absolutely brilliant, but I want to hear your version of the story.
Absolutely. Completely by accident. I'm not one of those people that ever thought about, like in my entire life, that I'd be doing my own thing. I was very happy in corporate. And Brad, you and I have talked before, right? So I know that you also come from this, place where you're happy, you're employed, there's a routine and there's excitement. I think corporate life and corporate jobs get a bit of a bad rap, and people are like, I can't wait to go out on my own. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not for everyone. You do need to be a bit of a glutton for punishment. Having said that, so corporate background, human resources, always knew I wanted to do that. I didn't always know about the online stuff, but the HR stuff, yes, completely, dead right about that since I was 18. So studied behavioral science, got into human resources and big, small, medium companies, had a lot of fun, worked in India, South America, and Europe, and came to Europe to study, wanted to do an MBA. And you have this window where you're like, I can do an MBA, this is the right time, right? Otherwise, you get into that executive MBA, and that's a little bit different, more senior, it's also more expensive. So I was like, this is the right window. And this was in South America. So I was preparing for business school exams. And at the same time, I was like, this is the window as well, because we'd been married for a little while. Like, this is the window for maybe starting a family. So I was one of those crazy people that did both. I did a full time MBA, came to France with a newborn baby. And I went to South America because of the husband following his job, in Uruguay, in Chile. And I was able to get employment just being tenacious, not taking no for an answer. And if I couldn't get the jobs I wanted, I was like, what can I do? Okay, you want an English teacher? I can teach English. And did whatever I could, to get by. And so Europe, it's been 12, 13 years in Europe now. I find it hard to believe. And worked in different companies here. I've had my share of layoffs, not just like I have executed those layoffs, which sounds awful, executed a layoff, but I've also been on the other side. I've been laid off multiple times. And I think we need to talk about those type of things because there's a little bit of a stigma, maybe, I don't know. And I don't think that this is particularly for one culture, like in Asia, etc. You don't talk about this. But also in Europe, right? Even in parts of North America, people would like to, portray this perfect exterior, very curated, whether it's for social media or it's in their, private life with their friends, like offline, right? So, been through that share, and 2018 was a turning point because I couldn't really understand what was going on, what I wanted to do, because the thing I thought I wanted to do wasn't working out. So I left corporate, didn't have a plan, and I just knew that okay, I'm not getting the jobs I want, but I do enjoy something, and that is YouTube. I'm consuming all this content on YouTube. I'm learning a lot. Whatever it is I want, a topic, anything, you name it under the sun, I'm finding a solution on YouTube. What about me making something there for a change? I've learned so much over the last 18 years. I started creating videos on YouTube. Nothing happened. And I did about 9 months of videos. Nothing. Like no one was watching. I had like maybe 50 subscribers. I was such an ungrateful person, Brad. And I was like, 50, half of them are people with my last name. They don't like they're feeling bad for me. I call them pity subscribers. So what did I do? I left it. I gave up. And then what I did was I took the same videos and I broke them up into bite-sized pieces for LinkedIn. And that is when interesting things started happening and people started reaching out one by one. Hey, I watched this video of yours or, this article of yours. Can we talk? And then, it sort of moved on from there. And just to close that YouTube story, one freakishly, like one video 2 years later, 2 years after it was published, terrible audio quality, horrible production quality, all homemade with my, iPhone. By the way, I still use the iPhone. Went viral, right? So this is 2 years after it was published. And thanks to that video, my other videos got discovered. I always knew my stuff was good. You know your content is good, right? You know it's coming from your heart, it's coming from your experience. But because I wasn't getting traction, I was like, I wish I hadn't given up, but I did, right? So in this 1 year of that video being discovered and my channel getting some traction, it's just crossed 101,000 like last week. So it's insane. That's my story for now.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It shows one thing. First of all, just sometimes, especially on a platform like YouTube, and I've had this experience myself. You just don't know what will work or what
Yeah,
will land and or what will get caught by the algorithm, this mysterious thing that's in YouTube, and propel a piece of your content out to so many more people, and that can make
exactly,
a lot of
exactly.
difference.
Exactly. I forgot to ask you, Brad. Is it okay if I have some tea?
Absolutely. I brought some myself.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers. I'm a big chai drinker myself, so
Awesome.
I'm with you on that. So I just wrote down, we've all been laid off. I was thinking, yeah, we could co-host a podcast and that would be the title. Because I think it's true that this is something that people don't talk about, especially on social media. Like they just don't talk about, oh, this is the time that I had this big failure, this time that I got fired. But the other side of the coin is that pretty much everyone has had that experience. Like I know for myself, I've been fired more than once from
Yeah.
different jobs that I've had. And
And
the other part is that for people like the two of us, and for most of the people who are out working on their own, many times the thing that motivated them was the fact that they got laid off. Otherwise, they may have never done it.
the nudge. No, very true. It's very interesting, Brad. I remember very well. December 2019. So I had been a little bit more regular on LinkedIn in 2019. December 2019, I made a 5 minute video, very raw, on LinkedIn. And I said, this is supposed to be a happy time and a fun time, right? And I put little Christmas lights at the bottom of the video. And I said, I know for a fact it's not a happy time or a fun time for many people. And I gave this encounter of what it's like to be laid off. And I said very specifically, unless there was a misconduct, unless there was a, like something you did bad, like you did it on purpose, unless it's any of that, because that's out of scope, being laid off is not your fault. And I know this for a fact because I followed people who got laid off because I laid them off, right? I have followed their journey during the course of my career. They're doing really well. You could argue they've done better. And why is that? Sometimes it's the circle and the square, right? I always get that wrong. So I put all of that in the video. This is the first time a video of mine went like on LinkedIn. It went like reached like hundreds of thousands of people. And I was like, wow. And I was up all night answering comments, answering DMs because it really resonated with people. And one of the things I remember saying in that is we've got to get rid of the shame because it's like I said, it's not your fault. We got to start. The only way to get rid of the shame and the stigma is to start talking about it. And in the body of the post, I'd written fired, laid off, downsized, pink slip, kick the can, all these expressions, right? Someone wrote, please don't say fired because you weren't fired. It was performance. And like, whatever, it's semantics, right? There is a little bit of that sort of shame and anxiety on it. I'm like, you can call it what you want. It feels like crap either way.
Yeah, absolutely. It does at the moment and the time that it's
Yes.
happening. It's
In
a
the heat
low
of it.
point.
Yes.
People and no one,
Yes.
like everyone want to say, "Oh yeah, that was definitely where I hit the bottom or a one of the troughs and sort of the ups and downs of how things have gone for me." And if you can, this is I think one of your supercharge elements. If you can take a look at that and see it as an opportunity, and in fact, for most people who've gone through this kind of issue, this kind of episode, what has happened is that they've come to a much better place. They've been able to find something that was new for them or different or a way to, in fact, garner their own inner resources and do something new and different and possibly even more creative than whatever it was that they were doing before.
That's exactly what your countryman, Steve Jobs, said. And I've repeated it so many times at the commencement graduation address of Stanford, right? He said, you can only connect the dots backwards, not forwards. So if you have the self awareness to do it, then you're like, actually, if they hadn't laid me off, I would have continued to be a little bit miserable. So I think they did me a favor. You need to be like accepting of it. And that takes time.
Yeah. All right. So on this topic of supercharging, and when we're talking about, let's just go into the realm of believability, which I think is so related to some of the other attributes like marketability. In order to be marketable, you have to be believable, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
what are the things that you talk about in that realm?
The reason I've written believability first, Brad, is because I sincerely believe that there's two elements of it. One is believing, I know that sounds so cliche, believing in yourself, particularly when times are hard. And then comes, are you believable to the others around you? Exterior, right? External, whatever that looks like. That could be social media, but there is a world and a life beyond social media, right? Oh, like, oh my God. Yeah. I mean, there's a huge world out there. What does LinkedIn have? 820 million members on LinkedIn? Well, that means there's 6 billion who are not on it, right? So whether I'm looking for a job, whether I'm looking for a client, and I don't like the word sales call, right? It's not really a sales call, it's a discovery call. You're checking each other out for fit. And the same thing for interviews. Um, there's the word interview, right? It comes from the French word entrevue, and the verb is s'entrevoir. It literally means to see each other. But at some point, we lost the meaning of that. So we need to go back to the basics, because somebody misinterpreted it over the centuries and said, "Oh, I'm going to call it interview, and it's going to mean so this guy's looking for a job, and or this one needs to go to this college, and we're going to do an interview." Right? So it's like, okay, I believe in myself, and this is a conversation between two equals. I'm not sure I'm right for them. Let's find out. That thinking comes from believability, and that comes from like whether or not they accept me, I'm going to be fine. Wow. So that hope, that faith, that for me is that foundation where no matter what's happening around you, that has no cracks in it. And you're like, either way, I'm going to be fine. Because when you have that, you are definitely believable to the outside world. I would even argue you are attractive. They want to work with you, they want to hang out with you, because you come across as someone who's like, believing in the strength of their convictions. Really? Right now? You haven't made any money in 3 years. Yeah, I really believe in what I do. I'm making a huge impact, making a huge difference. So, yeah, that's the first part of the four pillars.
Yeah. All right. So then there's this thing of networkability. And I want to put this in the context of our situation going back the last 2 years. Because starting about 2 years ago, our ability to go out and network in the way that we used to has been severely
Yeah.
limited. One on one meetings, group gatherings, conferences, business, breakfasts, all that kind of stuff abruptly ended. And so the only ways in which we could interact is ways like you and I are interacting right now, some kind of online virtual version of that, which requires a different a different level of the way that you show up and the way that you can speak to a camera or speak through a camera to other people. And you're someone who has become really practiced at doing this. So this is what I'd like to talk about is like, how do we supercharge our networkability using mediums like the one we're using right now?
Yeah, yeah, great question. I think these medium have existed at least for 10 to 15 years, but I think the world is woken up more and more to it because of this huge, what is the word? Um, Not magnified. There's another word that starts with M. It's been exponentially, it'll come to me. Accelerated. No, it starts with M. I hate it when this happens. Uh, so most of the world has woken up to it, but it was already there. Like I've been using Zoom before 2020 because of my clients being around the world, etc. So platforms have slightly like changed a little bit, altered, but it's such a brilliant time to be alive. Can you imagine, Brad, if something like this had happened in 1990, a global pandemic? I'm pretty sure we would have had way more like suicides and stuff like that because there was no internet, right? There was no way to interact with people. So this has been a blessing, huge blessing. And I count my LinkedIn network right up there with my friend network. I would even argue that it's maybe higher because, you know, if you make good friends online, there is really no difference. And yes, you can't see them in person, but you couldn't see your own friends in person either, right? If you're in lockdown, etc. So it's about who gets me in terms of what I do. And a lot of us, the circle of friends we have, may or may not get you, right? They've grown up with you, you're going through this transformation. They don't necessarily understand why you're doing this, why you're so driven. But if you have a bunch of entrepreneurship friends, whether even they're like one is sitting in Ghana, one is sitting in Abu Dhabi, one is sitting in Boston, but they have more in common with that college friend you grew up with who, went to the same college in Boston. So totally depends on how you see it. Now, as far as network is concerned, I think the word I don't like it, Brad. It gets a very transactional feel to it. And I started my career in software. I was recruiting software professionals. And we used to look for network engineers. So for me, the network is like the Cisco router. So it feels like, oh, so it's just, for me, it's really simple. It's like meet people, have a relationship, and the ones that you like, stay in touch, become friends. For me, that is the definition of networkability. And guess what? Who do we help? We help friends. We don't help strangers. And the best time to meet people, make relationships, not because you need something, make friends, is when you don't need them. And the closest analogy for me is I'm healthy, I'm in a strong body, I'm confident, without disease, I'm going to exercise and take my vitamins. Versus I'm feeling extremely ill, I've been hospitalized, I'm going to start taking vitamins. It's different. I'm not saying that those vitamins, when you're in a hospital bed, I'm not saying they're not going to help you. It's a lot more uphill, the battle, right? So it's about digging that well before you get thirsty. So that is that sort of proactive nature of networkability. And I wish I didn't have to use the word network, but it's the one that gets understood by most people. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally. Well, I look at this process as something around building and nurturing your ecosystem.
Yeah.
Every person needs to have a community
Yeah.
that supports them, whether they're, some of them are mentors, some of them are mentees, some of them are friends and peers and colleagues, but all of that together makes for a happy camper
Yeah.
in terms of as you go out in your professional life, whether you're working for yourself or you're working for someone else, these people around you are the ones who are going to help you in a whole bunch of ways that you don't have any idea about.
Exactly. And you know what they say, the grass is always greener on the I think the grass is greener where you water it, right? And so for the network is that the vitamin analogy, but also the garden. And it's the one where I've planted the most seeds. Because I suddenly can't expect an apple tree if I just planted the seed like in like January, right? It takes time. First, the seeds will change, sunshine, water, fertilizer. Got to nurture, like you said, the ecosystem, and it's just the garden. So it takes time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. And just as a historical note, there actually was a global pandemic back around 1919.
No, I was
Right.
talking about 1990, 90.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. Now,
When you
right.
and I were alive, I mean.
Yes. Right. If it had been
Yeah, you're
1990.
talking about the Spanish flu, the Spanish flu, which, by the way, there's nothing Spanish about it, but that's what we call it. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
That one
Yeah.
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, right. 1990, we would have had a whole different, I don't know, that would have been, it's hard to imagine. Somebody should write a science fiction novel imagining that.
Yeah. Yeah.
just as a point of contrast. But what I was going to say about the concept in the world of networking and applying it to what we do, like absolutely, I started using Skype as soon as it came out. I'm not sure what year
Yeah.
that was, but it was probably
Yeah.
like 2004-ish or 5,
Yes.
somewhere back then. And
Yeah.
I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
At that
Me too.
time, I had a music business and I was talking with artists from all around the world,
Yeah.
and their managers and the label owners and all of these people in the music industry from pretty much, anywhere. And I just loved the fact that I could call someone, we could see each other, and we could be talking from literally any corner of the world in different time zones and have as long a conversation as we wanted. And it was all just, all you needed was an internet connection. And that was
Yeah.
that. It was kind of
Exactly.
phenomenal. It has been phenomenal since then. And yet, even with that, up until 2 years ago, most people have been thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to leave that to the tech people, or I'm going to leave that to the sales people or something. And I'm not going to be somebody who gets on Zoom on a regular
Or we
basis.
can't work together because I haven't interviewed you in person. We
Yeah.
need an in-person interview.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Says who?
Right. How can I build trust or a relationship
And
or
what guarantee is there that you meet me in person? What guarantee is it that I'm actually going to be a better employee and I'm going to stick around? Like, you can read my body language even on the camera. Like, what's the difference? You know what I mean?
yeah, well, this is a learning that's been sort of definitely accelerated where people
Yeah.
have learned that all kinds of things are able to be done this way. And the other side of that is it's really important for all of us who are participating to figure out how we can do this, to the best of our ability, and how we can take advantage of this medium to the best of our ability. I mean, one example that I use is what we're doing right now. One of the reasons that I do this show is because it introduces me to all kinds of really interesting people who I want to learn from, like you. And I use this as a way to build my own ecosystem of people who are doing really interesting stuff from all around the world. And I'm very interested in how they've done it. Like in your case, that you've grown your channel to 100,000 plus subscribers on YouTube. That's a huge accomplishment for someone who is speaking about the topics that you're actually addressing. There are very few people on YouTube doing what you're doing and achieving that level of audience.
Actually, there are quite a few.
Okay, well maybe you're going, oh no, there's plenty. There's lots
There's
of them
quite
out
a
there.
few, and that's one of the reasons why I gave up, because I went
Oh,
into that comparison game and I was like, I'm
ah,
never gonna get there. What's the
right.
point? And that comparison thing is real. No, so it's very real. It's in the creator world. It's like it slows you down, or like in my case, you give up, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you're saying is exactly the reason I started the live stream and I started the podcast. I was like, I don't really care who's gonna show up, how many people, what is the return on investment. I'm like, I don't really care. When I meet these amazing guests, I'm paying attention, I'm taking notes, it's giving me joy. Now, if one person it's impacted or more, that's the cherry on the cake.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, you're doing live stream primarily on LinkedIn. And
I
tell me a
mean,
little
I
bit
live
about,
stream on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, but LinkedIn is where I get the most engagement. Yeah.
okay, well anyway, that's where I've seen it. So you're
Yeah.
you're
Yeah. Yeah.
multicasting, even better, you're multicasting to three
Yeah.
platforms. Super cool. And tell me a little bit about that. Like you were doing YouTube and then you said, okay, I'm going to try this live streaming. Let's see how it goes. I'm not going to care too much about how many people follow
I
me.
didn't, yeah, I didn't, like I said, I did about 8, 9 months of YouTube and I gave up actually on it. And I would start making native native LinkedIn videos, with captions and stuff like that, because I felt like my audience was hanging out on LinkedIn more than YouTube. I was wrong, but I was a little bit proud. So I was like, I'm right. This is what I'm going to do. So, and when I would do these, I didn't know anything about YouTube. I later hired a YouTube coach when I saw that it was getting so much traction. That was like last year in 2021. So I would take these little videos and put them on YouTube, but I would forget about them because nobody, like I said, nobody was really watching them. So this was all like going on through LinkedIn. And then LinkedIn started LinkedIn Live. And so in 2019, you had to apply, right? Now it's a little bit different, the process, creator mode and all of that. But back then you had to apply and they were very selective because it was in the beta phase. So I'd missed the boat. 2019 it had happened. So I applied at the end of 2019. The first time I got rejected. So I applied again a month later. I was like, sometimes it's a big company. Like sometimes maybe the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So I applied again. I got rejected again. And then I applied again in January. So November I applied 2019, December applied, nothing. January 2020, 2 days later, I get an email saying we've accepted you into LinkedIn Live. I was like, amazing. I don't know what I'm going to do, but amazing, cool. So I decided, since my firm is called Supercharge, I was like, I'm just going to host a show. It's going to be every single Friday at the same time, and I'm going to call it Supercharge Fridays. And it's going to be career related. Anyone want to come, like ask me questions? And it was a very different format back then because you couldn't see the comments on screen. You had to see the comments on the phone and then answer questions looking at it. So it was very awkward, very painful to watch. I can't watch it now, but that's what it was like. And then I did this for about 2 months. It would be like, ask me anything, bring your questions on here, open office hours. Then I also noticed that maybe there's certain topics that I like to talk about. So I started making presentations and I started sharing it. So the audience started coming and I was really enjoying it. And it was only 2 months later that I was like, actually, I'd love to have a guest on. And I invited her. She was amazing. Then I decided I'm going to bring in more guests. It's a lot of fun. So now, before you know it, I've been doing this for 2 years. So January 2020, we are what? In March 2022, and I haven't missed a single Friday. It is like, I don't know, my family watches it in Delhi, and during this time, we haven't gone back home because of the pandemic. right? Because I started and 2 months later the pandemic happened, so we haven't done these long distance travels. So it's a way they're watching me, and they're like, "Why are you doing this? Like, what's the return on investment? Like, you're putting all this work into it, and you getting anything out of it?" I was like, mm-mm. First of all, it's related to that third pillar, which is marketability. And secondly, why do I have to expect something? Why can't I just do some good and leave it and just add up my karma in that account of mine? Deepak Chopra talks about it. I was like, just leave it. So that's the LinkedIn life story.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, first of all, another lesson in persistence, right? Like keep going. I got lucky. I applied right away when LinkedIn Live came on, and I sent them a fairly detailed proposal. This is what I want to do, and
Okay.
I got it right away, which is neither here nor there. I have no idea why they said yes instead of no, but they did, and I don't have any idea why it took them so long to make their live video feature available for everyone else. But
Yeah.
the other thing I want to underline is the whole thing of how doing live video can be so forgiving. I mean, you're talking about, starting with your phone and reading comments off the phone, and the production value isn't all that great. And yet, obviously, people really appreciate it. More and more people started showing up, and you were getting support from the people who were
Yeah.
following
I
you.
mean, like you said, I mean, it's like, what is the intent of it? What do you want to do with it? I want to help people, right? My production value is still quite nonsense, actually. I just show up. I don't have a nice, fancy intro. I don't know anything. I don't have an outro. I don't have a team in place. I'm a solopreneur. So I use StreamYard, and a few weeks ago they came up with music. So I was like, background music. I tried it out with the audience. They were like, we don't like it. We don't. It was horrible. The music choice was awful. So then I remember two, three people came into my DMs and said, you know what, we show up every Friday because we want to listen to you. We want to hear what you have to say. And the fancy gizmo stuff, we're like, it's very nice. But that's not the reason we're hanging out. It's that sense of community, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's another really good point. When you have people joining you, you can not only have a conversation with them, between you and them, but you'll have this chat where your people will be talking to each other. There'll be a whole
Talking to
conversation
each
going.
other, and they have questions about the guest, they have questions about the topic, and I always flash their name as much as I can, if the quantity allows. Their name, people love hearing the sound of their name. Like, we're living in a world which has become so isolated, even though we've never been more connected. So you saying their name out and like, hey Brad, it's good to see you, thanks for joining in. And Brad is going to come back next week because it was fun. It was fun to feel seen and to feel heard.
Yeah,
And I'm
and I
not
just
doing it just for that, but it's also because Brad had something cool to say, right? It has to be both.
right. Yeah, well, I was going to say that I one of the early times I saw you, I think you were on vacation somewhere in the UK, and I was going,
Yeah.
like, talk about being willing to keep
Yeah.
on doing it. Like, even when you're on vacation and you're
Yeah.
doing whatever, you're like out on a back porch somewhere outside going, okay, well, here I am live on Friday. It was so great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There was that. It's happened a few times because it's been 2 years, right? It's been a kid's birth, or one of my kids' birthday party. One time, my foot, like I had fractured it, so it was in a cast. Once I had COVID, I didn't tell anyone. It was none of their business. The vacation one you're talking about was a month ago. I was in Cornwall, and it was one of the worst storms in 35 years in the UK. So I was like, okay, but it's a beautiful view, and I want to give people a change of scenery, always like inside the room. So it was like the phone was propped because the Wi-Fi wasn't working in the house. Lucky, awesome, awesome. So I was like on roaming and mobile data, and crazy wind at the back. I was like, this is as fun as it gets, as long as the phone doesn't blow away into oblivion. It was like the audio quality is not great, but you know what? It was like, let me help you. What are your questions? 20 minutes. I'm done. When I didn't want to break my streak. I'm also a little selfish, Brad. I've been doing it for, like I said, over 2 years. And I was like, come hell or high water, unless like something awful has happened, like I'm not going to miss my Friday.
That's the great. All right. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time together. And so, if there is one more thing that you would like to share about supercharging your life, supercharging yourself, what would that be?
I would say don't ask strangers for advice. You know very well what you want. So go after it and don't stop till you get it. That's the way I'm going to end.
That's great. Love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. If people want to follow up with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn. I'm more active on LinkedIn than on my own website.
All right. So reach out, DM you on LinkedIn, look for those lives. What time do you go live on Friday?
Every Friday, 2 p.m. Central European time. I'm not going to say EST because you guys have just changed time zone. Like your spring forward and Europe is going to change next week, but it's still going to be 2 p.m. Central European time.
All right. All right. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining. This has been great.
Thank you so much, Brad, for having me. All the best.
And for you guys who are still here and listening, I want to remind you that if you'd like to go binge and explore the entire archive of the livestream show, you can check it out at thelivestreamshow.com, where this is turned into an audio podcast where you can find it on every single one of those favorite podcast apps. So Apple, Spotify, you name it, all of the rest, they're all there. And of course, every single episode in both video and audio can be found at thelivestreamshow.com. Thank you so much for joining, and we will see you next time.